Welcome to episode 306 of the Board Game Barbecue podcast, brought to you by Advent Games and our amazing, epic, legendary Patreons. Tonight I'm your host, Adrian, in the hot seat, and I'm joined by my fellow Queenslander, Dana. How are we doing, Dana?
Hello, good, thank you.
Last time I saw you was snoring on my couch. Just going to put that out there.
That's right.
Yep, you were supposed to go home, never made it. That's fine.
Sorry.
That's all right. It was so funny, actually. Sorry. And also joined by Joe down in Melbourne. But actually to prep my beef ribs on the smoker. And then I heard a snoring noise. And then I was like, ooh, someone's here that's not supposed to be. And then I checked and it was Diana on the couch asleep. So I had to do all of the rub and everything with a head torch on in the dark. So
that's
I was
very
just
kind of you.
Yeah. I was just prepping everything as quietly as I could so I didn't wake anybody.
Oh, that's very kind of you because I didn't notice, but I really shouldn't have joined the Board Game Barbecue because I have not had a drink since 2005. And for some reason that night I decided to have a few drinks. It probably wasn't the best.
Mountain Dew and Jack Daniels. I converted 4 people that night. Everyone was like, these are so good. So they're great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's another thing as well. Back to the smoker situation. Doing beef ribs, I've never done them before, or I have done them twice and have been fails. So I had this massive amount of pressure and anxiety that they were going to be okay. Or I really researched it again and made sure I followed every step. And they came out so well. I even shocked myself. They were so good. And I'm now inspired to try and keep doing them because the last time they were undercooked, so they were quite chewy because they weren't cooked enough. This time, bang on. So beef ribs, I've learnt my lesson and they're back on the menu.
Well, wasn't there only brisket on the menu? So now there's 2 things.
Two beef on the menu.
2 beef.
Instead of 1.
2 beef, mate.
2 beef now. I do chicken and other things, but the brisket's where it's at. But
so
okay.
Good.
Yeah.
What was the difference in the beef ribs? What made the difference this time?
I think not falling asleep with a glass of Jack Daniels in the garden and then the temperature getting too hot in the smoker is probably one of the best bits. That definitely helped. But yeah, the reason why I did the ribs is because Lauren and James came to visit because James unfortunately couldn't join us last time when we had the Game of Palooza at my house and he felt like he'd missed out. So they made the effort to come up here and hang out for a weekend. So I thought I would try the beef rib. Joe, what have you been doing?
What have I been doing? So it was Mike's birthday. Mike previously on the podcast. So it was his birthday yesterday. So I went around to his house and played board games all day, which was lovely. So you'll hear about those shortly. And then it's my birthday on Tuesday. So I went out for lunch with the fam bam today. Yep, got a nice big chunky Gameology voucher. So
what did you buy?
I ended up splurging. I try to do this thing with gift vouchers where I try and buy something I wouldn't normally buy for myself. And so I ended up buying...
Is that because you can feel like it's free money?
Yeah.
So if it's a fail and you hate it, you go, that's okay, no loss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't spend my own money on that. That's fine. So I ended up buying the local Gameology around the corner from me here in Melbourne was selling Blood on the Clock Tower. So I ended up buying that. So I hope I get to play it a bit. So we'll see.
Wow. That's a very different game to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably the most expensive, or definitely the most expensive, social deduction game I've ever bought. So
have you got a group that would play it?
Yeah. I reckon my regular board game group would play it. We often get together and on game days we'll play Monikers frequently and other large group games, and then we'll split off into our separate groups. So
yeah.
Hopefully we'll get a fair whack.
That has to be, though, the most expensive social deduction game ever, right?
Easy.
There can't be another one.
Easily. Easily, yeah.
Oof. Is it the big book thing?
Yeah, it's a big book. Wow. Yeah, it's cool.
Amazing.
You're going to have to get a cloak or something if you're running it. You have to get a cloak.
Dana, I'm gay enough. I don't need a cloak.
He's got 40 cloaks. What are you talking about? It's got enough cloaks.
That's right, yeah. What about you, Dana? What have you been up to?
I actually had I don't know what it is. It must have been, was there like a blackout or something? I don't know, 9 months ago or whatever, but it's Joe's birthday. And actually on the podcast, it's also Jules and Mitch's birthday today. Yep. So it's so weird that there's so many birthdays. So I went to a birthday myself today and we had a lovely experience. It was a group of ladies, the ladies that I normally play with, but we did a thematic obsession session and had a full high tea. It was absolutely beautiful, like with overlooking someone's back garden over their deck and with all the trees and everything. And it was so beautiful. That's and she had cool. Made a full spread of cakes and desserts and it was amazing. So it was absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Did you guys really get into it and like have like scandal and gossip?
No. We had two obsession games running side by side type thing.
Great. No. Love that.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Did you attempt to do very well spoken British accents?
I wish I could, but
go.
I should beg your pardon.
It's not bad.
That was good. That was very good.
I thought it,
Can you say more than 2 words?
Excuse me, could you pass the chocolate? Excuse me, could you pass the chocolate?
It's not bad. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
You know, what can I say?
Joe?
Okay, go on, Joe.
Joe?
No.
I beg your pardon.
So, I did get to play a bunch of games while Lauren was here, and one of them was Stick'em, and I played it with Dana. And have you played Stick'em, Joe?
Yeah, I hated it.
I got stuck.
Is that just because you don't like trick takers purely? Because I don't even really see
it like a trick taker.
Yeah, I don't. It's supposed to be, but I don't feel like it is.
Yeah,
I didn't hate it. It was just it left me feeling like everyone else was better at trick taking than me, which is okay. That's an okay thing. But
yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's the second time I've played it. Completely different group. We read it from the rule book and went from there. It was pretty simple to get moving, and yeah, I found it harder to stick people with tricks this time. I don't know whether that's because when I played it with Mitch and that was really our focus, was trying to make people get stuck with these cards. And in this game, people were just too onto it to let that happen. They were really calculating it out. Yeah, but really great game. And I got it from Japan. It's like the German version. No English rule book in the box, but it was like $14. It was like nothing. It was so cheap, and you can't really get it here, I don't think. I looked it on Board Game Oracle and it was unavailable. So I thought, I'll pick it up. It was fun. And I thought I might try and teach it to Finn, but the complication of how the tricks change and how the game state changes, I think would throw him because it's constantly adapting and changing. But yeah, great. Good little trick taker game. It's if you see it on the second-hand market or Capstone do another rerun at print of it, then it's definitely worth picking up because it's plenty of fun in a large group. It's that hits 5-player number perfectly for that time of the night. So
yeah, if you like screwing people, that's perfect for you.
Yeah, don't let me yuck your yum. If you like trick takers and you like being mean to your friends, you'll love this game.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
What else? What about you, Dana? What else did you play?
Today, see, you're going to think this is just ridiculous because we played Obsession and for like 4 hours.
That's all right.
That's the only game we played, but we talked the whole time. So it just takes a long time. By the time we have our 6th cup of tea, it just takes a long time. But I have got some other games to talk about outside of that. I wanted to talk about Red Cathedral. I haven't spoken about this game before, and I was looking at past records, and it was first sizzled back in 2020 by Maggie from Thinkathema. And that was episode 86. So that was like in the early days.
One Dan.
Sorry?
One Dan, 86.
Yes. Yeah, so it hasn't been. I think it's sort of forgotten
we've
about.
Lost Joe.
Joe's giggling.
I'm laughing because Dana didn't get the joke.
I have actually.
Sorry,
I'm
one
not
Dana,
joking.
not one Dan.
I'm not joking. I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's all good.
Can you explain it?
86, Dan being 86, one Dan as a unit of system of counting.
What the are you talking about?
It's all good. Move along.
Anyway. So Red Cathedral hasn't been Sizzled since episode 86, and I think it's sort of been forgotten about, really. It was pretty hyped, I think, back in 2020. Mind you, we were all stuck inside at the time. But I, as you know, work at More Than Meeples, and I happened to notice it is currently at More Than Meeples and another store in Sydney. It is $34.95.
Yeah, wow,
And
that's
I
pretty
thought,
cheap.
you are crazy not to buy this game for that price. It is so good. So if for people that maybe haven't heard about it, who got into the hobby late, it's by De Beer, and it's by these designers called Shay and Isra, and they designed White Castle, which people probably might be more familiar with. But this was their first game, and it's same sort of thing where it's a lot of strategy in the same size box as White Castle. They seem to be doing a whole run of these types of a lot in a small footprint, I think, with De Beer. You're a team of architects trying to build St. Basil's Cathedral, and you're just competing for the most prestige. And it's a gorgeous production of a game. It's wooden components. The artwork is beautiful. It's got a lovely little dice rondelle, which is probably the main part of the game. Then there's sort of like a set of columns that you set out where it's different parts of or different towers of the cathedral that you're building, which ends up being sort of like an area control thing for the end of the game. And it's lovely how when you take your actions and you're building these parts of the cathedral, that you're moving your dice and adjusting pips around this rondelle. And it's such a pleasure to play, and it plays in about 90 minutes or so, but it's really, really satisfying. Honestly, if you don't buy this at $34.95, you're mad if you don't own it already. But it's a wonderful game. Have either of you played it before?
I have played it. I thought it was good. It didn't knock my socks off. But back to your point about how good of a deal it is, there's a few games that for some reason they just drop to almost half price, and they are great games to pick up. That's one of them. It's a Wonderful World is another one that goes down to $35 all the time, half price sale for some reason. There's a few other, not classic games, but games that are sort of very solid and have been around for a few years now that often go down to that price bracket and are often very worth picking up. Even though, there's plenty of new games coming out, these games still have a place.
$35. You can't even get an Oink game for $35.
No. True.
So it's just there's a lot there. Anyway, have you played it, Joe?
I haven't. I bought it similarly when it was at a similar price, and then ended up getting the White Castle and playing that before I played the Red Cathedral, and I'd heard similar things to what Adrian had said. That, and I've heard people say who've played both that the White Castle was just a bit more interesting. So I haven't actually ended up playing the Red Cathedral yet. I'd love to, and I've heard the same thing that you said, that it's a lot of game in a small box, and for that price, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, that's just sort of struck me. It was a deal that struck me. Can I talk about one other thing?
Yeah, you go.
I did play, and this was actually part of my oath, was I did play the expansion to Expeditions called Gears of Corruption by Jamie Stegmaier. And Expeditions is another game that I don't think it was very well received, other than the artwork. It was touted as being this, sequel to Scythe. I don't think it's a sequel to Scythe at all. I think it's a different, like a different game. It shares some similarities, but I think it is a different game. The artwork is just as beautiful as Scythe, of course, but you've sort of got these mechs that are moving around a map, and you're playing cards and taking actions, and then you're trying to be able to place stars as completed objectives. And once people have placed their fourth star, then the game ends. But it's all about card play and movement around this set grid of hexes. It's very little interaction other than you can't go on each other's spaces. So for me, it's actually a better alternative to Scythe, because I don't particularly like the combat side of things. So it's the perfect game for me. But there was always a bit of a problem with it. One, if you play it at like 3 or 4 players, there are 2 spots where you can get workers. Part of the game is getting these different coloured workers to be able to activate abilities on cards. And unfortunately, there's only 2 spaces that at the start of the game that have that. So if you've got a 4-player game, you end up sort of being, well, 2 people sort of sit on these spaces for 2 turns, and you're sort of locking people out, and it became a bit of an issue. And I'm pleased to say that they've sort of tried to rectify this. And I know that people might say, I hate expansions when they fix things, but this does do that to a certain extent. So in this expansion, you actually get you start with a gold worker, which is like a wild worker, to sort of try and prevent that. But it also actually comes with a lot more as well, which I think makes it well worth it if you do like this game. And once again, I know that these are fixing things, but I still think if you do like the game, it's worthwhile picking up. So the mechs, it came with these silicone bases, and they just kept falling off all the time. So there's new silicone bases in there, and they fit properly and they stay on. So that's one thing. The boards, they have redone, and they're dual layered now, which was a bit of a problem. Like, you always ended up knocking your pieces everywhere. And so they've given you dual layer boards as well, plus another 2 sort of like faction boards or mech boards with special abilities. They've added a couple of extras because a couple of them were a little bit more overpowered. So I think adding 2 more has sort of evened the playing field a little bit. It also adds some extra character cards and companions. And because I think people were complaining that it lacked interaction, it's added a little bit of that into it. Not Scythe, where you're battling each other, but it's added this thing called a corrupt mech. And that will actually, once someone has completed one objective, or the first person has completed an objective, which means to place a star on a particular objective, this corrupt mech will come out, and it will start taking turns, and it will start moving around the board. And if it's meant to move on your space, you'll get penalised. You might lose a resource, or you might lose a card, that kind of thing. It's not huge, it's not bad or anything like that, but it does sort of just make things a little bit more competitive. And I think it's particularly good at 2 to have this particular mech out there, because at 2 it's too big. Like the area for 2 players is just too big. It was never altered for 2 players. So I think having that does make it a little bit better. I would have liked to have seen the pattern, like it's a set pattern that you set these hexes up. I would have liked to have seen that changed for 2 players, but they didn't do that. But anyway, so it's got this new mech in there. So I believe that whilst I wouldn't say it's essential if you like the original game, if you intend on playing with 3 or 4 players, and this is the other thing, and I'm not really sure why they did this. I don't know if either of you have played this before, but they've made it 6 players now. I would never play this at 6 players. It would be a really long game and a long time between turns. So I would never play it at 6. But anyway.
It's funny. I think I've listened to a couple of designers talk about expansions and how they approach expansions. And I've heard a number of designers say that one of the most common requests from players and people who buy the games is for an expansion that expands the number of players. So from 4 to 5 or 5 to 6, for example. And a lot of the time they don't want to do it because their design doesn't fit that player count, for example.
What's your personal take then on expansions that come out that fix problems that are found after a release?
I think it's, I'm not a designer, but I think it's natural to want to try and rebalance something that maybe wasn't quite where it should be, or you didn't realize maybe it was a blind spot or something until you had more eyes on it. So I think it's a natural response. I think where people can feel a bit funny about it is that you're having to pay more money to then play a game that you've already paid money for that was quote unquote broken.
But if we bought a DVD of a film and then a year or two later they released a director's cut and then we bought that, we don't have much of an issue with that. We get excited about that.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that,
but that's, I don't know.
I feel for me, I don't mind it. For me personally, if I had a game that I already loved and then other people found problems with it and then there was a patch or whatever and it came out as an expansion with granted extra content or allow me to play with 6th player or whatever, maybe in expeditions, I might not want to play it with 6, but just having the option to do it, to give it a try, as long as it was reasonably priced, I wouldn't be too upset. But sometimes I feel when it's like expansion on top of an expansion to expansion on top of a patch of a fix of a this and a new sheet for this, that is where it gets a bit extreme. I would say Tapestry would be in that kind of field.
Yes.
But I think that's because so many people have played it on BGA, talking probably 100,000 games or something ridiculous. Like I think that's when you're getting those kind of numbers and those kind of high-end, high-level players that have played it hundreds and hundreds of times. That's when you can start to see cracks in asymmetry. And that's when you can fix them. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's better than going, well, that faction's the best faction. If you get this and get that, then you're basically going to win. And just leaving it, for me, it doesn't really upset me. So.
I think many people think that the base game should be fully functional at whatever player count they've given it, which I think was 5 originally. So it should work at 5. And I don't think it's without that special worker, I think that should have been included in the base game. And I believe that that's something that could have been picked up in playtesting. I can't imagine how it wouldn't be picked up in playtesting. I would find that very, very strange. So, and I agree with that. I think that the base game should function for what they said the player count is. Yeah,
fair play.
Personally, I have this philosophy that I think balance is a bit of an illusion. So I think some people think, well, perfect balance is achievable and that's how it's going to be. Ultimately, we're human beings and we're not perfect. I think sometimes we ourselves as gamers have unrealistic expectations of what a publisher can do. A lot of the time, if I love the game, I don't really care about whether it's balanced or not, and it's fun how it is, even with its imperfections. And so if an expansion is just going to try and fix and patch up balance issues, then that's going to be much less attractive for me.
One positive thing as well that I will say is that it's extremely easy to put this expansion into the game. Right. I really, really dislike expansions that are difficult to you've got to relearn things and change things. I really dislike that. And I have expansions sitting on the shelf that just sit there because I just haven't got the energy to relearn this bloody game again, sort of thing. So I do appreciate that it was very easy just to quickly read a small rule book and chuck it in there. So, yeah.
I also got to play Monikers, but I actually got to play it with Finn, which
Okay.
was very interesting,
Oh.
especially when it came to the charades part where I'm like, what is he doing? I have no idea what he is trying to portray to the group. But yeah, it was good. We did cull the cards, so we took out some cards
Yeah.
for him so that
Yeah.
because he would not know who Nelson Mandela is or someone like that. Do you know what I mean? Or someone that's
Yeah.
very specific. So we kind of kept in
This
characters.
9-year-old trying to do Nelson Mandela.
Could you imagine? He would have no idea. But, he can read the card and it gives you a description of who he is. So he'll be able to read that out and everyone would be able to get it. But that's not the fun. Do you know what I mean? The fun part is trying to use your brain to describe it in a very quick way. But yeah, it was great. It shows that you can play it with someone as young as that and they totally get it. And we had a blast. James, Finn, and I were on the same team, and MJ and Lauren were on the other team, and we got rinsed, but it was still great. It was so fun just to see him, and also remembering the cards and having that memory aspect was, it definitely came into play a few times in the game. So yeah, it was good.
I have not played it, nor do I know anything about it. Is it just charades? Is that what it is?
It's very simple. Basically, you get 10 cards each. Right? So I know what 10 cards are, and my other teammates know what their 10 cards are, and the opponents know what their 10 cards are, but I don't know my other teammates' cards, right? Get that deck, shuffle it all together in a big shuffle, put the pile out. First team goes first, they draw a card, and they basically have to describe what's on the card. So, like, let's say Joe Biden. You'd be like, current American president, really old, Divry, gets lost.
You could just sit there and stare?
Yeah, basically. And then essentially what happens is they have to guess who it is. If they get it right, you get the card, and the card has a points denoted on it for how easy or hard it is to get. You basically do that for 60 seconds. Everyone does it. And then the deck gets smaller and smaller until it runs out. And then essentially you do the same thing again, exactly the same. You shuffle the deck up, second round, but you can only say one word to give the clue.
Oh, so it changes.
And then the third round, you do charades. But by the time, because you've already done these other previous rounds, you have knowledge of what some of the cards are and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was just simple but great. So
it doesn't sound like much done up, but it's actually really fun. And I think the magic is in that first round is when you start to get inside jokes happening. So, when you get to the one word clue phase, you'll say a word that has nothing to do with what's on the card, and it's referencing a joke that was made during that card being explained in the first round. And similarly for the charades bit. I think that's where the magic source of the game is that those inside jokes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that does happen in every game. I've played it twice. I haven't played it multiple times, but I feel like those meta jokes come in every game because they were happening in our game. They happened in Mitch's game, and it's just brilliant. Like, it's just super clever, super simple. Had a great time. It was just very surprised at how well Finn could, portray some of these clues, and it was great. So
it's actually based on a game that is I can't remember the name of the original game, but it's essentially not copyrighted, that game. And so what is clever about the Monikers packaging of it and the way they do it is, I think, the points on the bottom of the cards, which gives a bit more of a competitive edge to getting the harder cards for the different teams. But then also the actual cards themselves are very clever. So it will be people like Joe Biden or Nelson Mandela, and they have newer references as well. So it won't be potentially, that's younger kids can sometimes play it as well. But then there'll be cards like, literally one of the cards from this weekend was opening a jar of pickles was one of the cards. And so, and there was one, I played once with Mike, and there was this one card that he kept getting, he kept putting into the mix, and it was like this really long title, which was like, it was like the astronaut who drove all the way across America to steal her boyfriend's underwear to do XYZ. So that was the whole card that you had to guess.
Oh,
and so
my
people
God.
were trying to stumble. You have to get it exactly. So people were trying to stumble over and get the title each time. It was quite fun.
Oh, my God.
There's also bits where Lauren had Ouija board right in the third round. So she started to move her hands around the table, kind of like a Ouija board, and MJ just sat there going like no idea what you're doing. But then we didn't get that card. Then they got it again, but MJ had it. So I think she grabbed Lauren's hands and just started to move them exactly how Lauren did it. And she's like, Ouija board. Because she knew straight away because she'd already seen the card. Like, it's just simple, good fun.
It's a great game. So good.
And
I love it.
another game as well, Joe, that you played and spoke about recently was Paku Paku. That was interesting. I feel the same. I really enjoyed it. It was great. We only played it with 3. I would much prefer to try and play it with 6 to see how those dice move around the table, because with 3, you are constantly doing stuff. You don't stop and you're just moving constantly. And there wasn't no arguments, but there was definitely some Finn just picked his dice up and put it 10 centimeters in front of him because he'd finished with it, didn't pass it to me. So therefore I just left it there. Then I got them stacked up against me and, stuff like that. But it's a great fun game. Super simple. Joe spoke about it like 2 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago.
I think so.
To put it in the show notes. But super simple party game. Like you said, dexterity and real time. Didn't think I would enjoy it. I did do a bit of a groan face when it came out the box. But hey, it was great. Super fun, super chaos. Definitely gets everybody high energied. It was great.
When we talk about PlayCon and we say the game of the con was Sausage Sizzle, I reckon that number 2 was that Paku Paku, because
100%.
all the volunteers, it was so good, because sometimes when the board game library was a little bit, wasn't very busy, that kind of thing, to see these volunteers at the desk, with the laptops, and they'd be playing Paku Paku together. And it was really lovely. It was good to see.
So, should we move on to some sizzling games? Joe, I'm super interested to hear about your game.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. I got to play the new edition of Yokohama recently with the blinged up deluxe components as well, and it's really, really very pretty. I love the original Yokohama, so I bought it. It was one of those games that I played over BGA over the pandemic, and I'm glad that I did, because it's a game that, looking at the original version, I never would have picked up because it's quite beige. It's, the theme of it, well, now interesting to me now. At the time, I was like, it's about, trying to be the most successful, influential trader in Yokohama back in the 19th century. And it's all about being like a CEO of a trading company in Yokohama. And so that was relatively dry. It would have been relatively dry to me back then. But the game itself is so crunchy, and so the mechanisms are so fun and interesting that I would highly recommend that if you're someone who likes strategy games, Euro games, it's got a lot of interactivity in it as well, which is what I probably enjoy about it the most. Highly, highly recommend it. So I got to play the new deluxe version, which just kind of beefs up that kind of user experience for Yokohama. The original Yokohama is like essentially cardboard cards, like quite flimsy card stock, and you're placing cardboard tokens on the different cards and they can easily get bumped off. Whereas this new deluxe copy has, dual layer boards for where you place your different buildings in. It has the deluxe components have like wooden components with nice screen printing over the top for the different resources. The art has been updated as well, so it's not as beige. It's quite beautiful. The cover itself has like this purple kind of lavender tone to it. I think it's going to be a lot more approachable and accessible for people to play, which is always going to be a good thing. Have you guys played it? Either of you?
No, I haven't.
No,
wow.
I haven't
I
played
have it on my shelf of shame.
Oh, it's so good. I just can't recommend it enough. I got to play it this weekend. So I would say it's medium to heavy in terms of its weight. It's got a combination essentially of worker placement and resource management. And the thing that is, I guess, most standout about it is it's got this, the board itself is modular. So you're playing in Yokohama, which is this port city, and then you'll set up the board randomly each time, and the board itself is made up of these kind of cardboard rectangles that represent the different things, like the silk factory or the tea plantation, for example. So the way things are arranged is going to be different from game to game. And you'll be placing your workers out to these different locations and taking the action for that location. So, for example, obtaining fish resource. And the interesting thing is that you power up how powerful that action is by placing multiple workers in the one space. So the way the game works in terms of taking your turn is that one of the first things you'll do is you have the common worker, which is the assistants, and you'll place them out onto the different locations. You'll always place out 3 into 3 different locations on the board. And you then, after you've placed out your 3, will then place your president, which is the large meeple, which is what you use to select the action you're taking that turn. And so part of the strategy of the game is you're going to be placing these assistants out on the board, and they'll build up over time on the different locations. And then when you place the president down, however many workers you've got on that particular area, including the president, will then create how powerful that action is. And usually it's a power between 1 and 5. And it'll be something like, if you have a power of 1, you'll get 1 T resource. If you have a power of 5, you'll get 5 T resource, for example. What that ends up doing is that you have to really think about where are you placing all your workers, because how are you going to chain together the different things that you're doing. And the way that you get points in this game is essentially you're trying to get the resources to then turn that into imports, and you'll be kind of fulfilling order cards. You'll need to, on a card, for example, give 3 fish, 2 tea, and 1 silk, and then you'll get an import and some money or some victory points from that. And then you'll then convert those imports into victory points via different pathways as well. It's a bit of a point salad kind of game. So that's kind of the nutshell of the game. And I think the most interesting thing is that kind of worker placement aspect and powering up the actions side of things. The other thing is it's so interactive because you can't select the actions that someone else has selected, and you can't, if you're moving your president, the large meeple, you're moving it. It's not like you're picking it up and placing it somewhere else. You're technically moving it through the different markets. And so what happened to me yesterday is I was getting blocked off quite a bit by my competitors in terms of not being able to get through to where I needed to go. And so it's very interactive from that point of view.
Was it a Kickstarter?
No, did they kickstart it?
I don't think so, because
No,
I
I
would
think
have backed it.
Yeah, it was direct to retail. Yeah,
Fair
I'm pretty
play.
sure. Yeah. You guys should definitely play it. Dana, you should definitely play your copy for sure.
Yeah. As I said, I've got the old version sitting there on a shelf, and I just haven't played it. But I'm it's almost like I long to be the gamer that I'm not. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
It's not meant to be sad, but I'm just saying I long to be the, like, in some ways, like interaction, like a little bit more interaction or whatever, but yet I'm just not. So I've got these games that probably maybe might not suit me or whatever on the shelf, in the vain hope that maybe one day that might change. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it would be my type of game, but anyway.
Is it the interactivity that puts you off it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But as long as it's positive, interaction, I don't mind interaction. But as I said, and the people that I play with don't enjoy that. So unless I plan on playing by myself or with, interacting with my husband in that way or something like that, I tend to sort of steer away from those types of games.
It's not a game where you're like purposefully, well, no, you can do that. I guess if you're playing with people who don't like that negative interaction, then I think you probably wouldn't encounter it. You might accidentally block each other off, but it won't be like, haha, I knew what you were trying to do and I stopped you from doing it. So I wouldn't let that stop you from playing the game. Definitely give it a go.
Like, for example, Scythe, I mentioned it before, we still play Scythe, but nobody does the combat unless someone will say, "Oh, look, I really just want to get this star because I need to get the combat. Can we just we'll sort of get permission."
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And yourself, Dana, what would be your sizzling game for this week?
My sizzle is Star Tycoon. You guys may have heard of this game because of PlayCon, maybe. It was actually being demoed by Let's Play Games. It's available.
I
It's
saw it.
available in stores
Yeah.
now, but it was being demoed there. It's actually by Australian designers. I happened to notice on BGG today. Their names are Peter and Alkira Sanderson. I'd not heard of them, but it's published by Good Games Publishing. And I guess the thing that attracted to me this game was not the space theme, because I don't really like space, but this is I've been trying to get my husband to sort of play a few more games, but there's only so much Splendor you can play, right? Like,
Have you played Splendor Jewel with your husband yet?
Actually, I haven't. I haven't played Splendor Jewel. Often I'll play Splendor and my daughter will join in. So we tend to sort of play 3-player. But, my daughter loves Splendor and, that's about it really. But anyway, so this, you're probably going to go, oh, how boring that I'm talking about this game. But it's a bit like, it gives me vibes of Splendor, a little with a bit more complexity to it. It reminds me a little bit of It's a Wonderful World as well.
Nice.
So obviously it's a space theme, and you're supposed to be this interstellar business, and you're trying to turn yourselves into a mega corporation. And it's set collection, similar to Splendor, tableau building, and it's got a very small little economic element that they've added in, which I think is probably what adds a little bit more complexity and a little bit more variety to it. So this game, it's played over 4 rounds, and if you saw it on the table outside of this little economic component, you'd probably think it was Splendor. It's set up in a very similar way, but in this game you've got a starting planet and a small production of 2 resources that you'll be able to get and increase throughout the game. So already you're sort of starting with that, a bit like It's a Wonderful World, you're starting corporation, similar to that. So you're already getting a little bit more interest out of that Splendor vibe by just having that. So aside from like your starting planet and your production and a special ability, there's a card market, and you've got level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then you've got these economic market where you can trade energy for resources or resources for energy. And when you do that on your turn, it will change the price of that. So instead of spending 2 energy for 1 resource, you'll have to spend 3 energy for a resource, depending on which action you do or which resource you trade in. But it's very easy to set up. It's got a very good rule book. It's got a very good player aid, comes with a tray for all the resources. So it's very, very simple. So on your turn, you take 3 actions in a row. So, for example, similar to Splendor, you can buy a card. And when you buy cards in this game, it's not like Splendor where you're just collecting types of cards and putting them in columns type thing. You're attaching these cards. And these cards, by the way, are called developments. And you're attaching these cards to the planets that you're purchasing. And these planets want specific tags. So you're trying to get developments that will help increase your production, but also have specific tags. Because if you don't have the right developments attached to your planets will score 0 for you. So it's all about just trying to get the right tags for each planet and the right benefits. You've also got the ability to buy partnerships in certain types of planets as well. So that's another scoring opportunity. The other economic element is you can actually take out a loan, and each round you'll have to pay sort of like an interest. And if you finish with it at the end of the game, you'll lose points for it. So that sort of makes it a little bit interesting. There's a smuggle action that you can do where you can use a particular type of card in an opponent's tableau, but you have to pay them to be able to use it. So that's quite interesting. There are some take that cards, which are not bad. I don't think they're that bad. It's the usual thing where you're sort of stealing a resource, that kind of thing, but it's not that bad. You can leave them out. So depends whether you like to play with that kind of thing or not. There's event cards, which sort of, once again, can change the way the game goes through each play. There's bonus scoring that you can do as well. Now, this game, what I really love about it as well is that at the back of the rule book, there's a list of variants. And I love when you can acceptably change games, because some people might try and house rule things, and it seems to be a bit of a no-no to be able to do that, even though that sometimes it might make it better for you or your circumstances about playing the game. But this gives you quite a few choices about how to play the game. So one of the suggestions is that you can introduce bartering, which I've never seen that I don't know whether I've seen the term bartering in a game before, but they suggest to try bartering if all players agree, and to see if you can bargain for resources and cards. It also says that even though it's a 4-player game, you can actually accommodate up to 6 players, but you just have to be aware that the cards might run a little bit scarce and the turns will be long, but at least it gives you the alternative to be able to try that as well. And there's also another variant as well that suggests team play. So to me, this is so much more than what something like Splendor offers. And I do know that there are quite a few, like when I look on social media and I'm talking to people on social media about people playing with their partners and things like that, and even people that come into the store at More Than Meeples will often say, oh, my wife, I'm just using it as an example, but they'll say, oh, look, my wife doesn't like anything too heavy. She likes Splendor, that kind of thing. This is just that step up, which is a little bit more interesting than Splendor. The gap that is between, say, something like Red Cathedral, but it's sort of that middle ground for someone who maybe has a partner who isn't much of a board gamer. And I actually thought it was a very good game. So
it was originally a Kickstarter that Good
Was
Games
it?
Publishing. Yeah, they must
I
have
didn't
picked
even
up the
know
rights
that.
for it. Yeah,
I
and
didn't even know that.
didn't do too badly, if I'm honest. It funded and had like 2,200 backers or something. It was yeah, and it looks great. And now that you said it's like It's a Wonderful World, I can see those cards, and I can see how that gives those vibes from just the cards. So.
Well, anybody who's going to the Brisbane Game Day, we've actually got one of the volunteers teaching a couple of games of Star Tycoon. So, and there are spaces available. So if you'd like to have a go at it, sign up.
Cool.
That
How about
is
you, Adrian?
Star Tycoon. Yeah, for me, it's a game that MJ got for my birthday, I think, or Christmas. Maybe Christmas. Actually, yeah, wow, Christmas. That was a long time ago already. But yeah, MJ bought me Nyet Christmas because she knew the pedigree of how much love that trick taker game has received from the community and Mitch and other people that have played it. And is it the GOAT? Like, that's the question, right? Is it the GOAT? And I think I've played so many that like the top 5 just sort of blur together. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all very good at that level. But for me, this one, I think this is like the most fun that I have with a trick taker.
Hmm.
I actually played this with Dana. Dana, you were there.
I
And
was. I loved it. Loved it.
yeah, and it's super simple, right? It's cards. I think there's 3 ones, and then there's, 2 to 13, and 4 suits. That's pretty much it. And you have to follow suit if you've got it. Usual trick taking rules kind of apply. However, at the start of the game, you have 5 characters, and you all have like a little character chip that denotes what character you are. And essentially, there's a little grid that's in front of you, and there's, if you imagine like almost like a grid pattern of a 5x5 sort of square, and then there's a first player, discard, trump, super trump, and points. And you basically place your little marker on this grid, and that shapes what the round will be like. So it can be really interesting because you can basically cut out, say, the trump cards to being the green, and you haven't got any green. So all of a sudden, you aren't going to win many. However, the points for that round go from 1 to 4 and a -2. So sometimes you want to lose because you want to lose trumps that round for whatever reason. And there's always someone in the group that wants that -2 round because the chaos that it brings and the confusion that it brings is just brilliant. And also, you have a thing called super trumps. And because of all the ones that are in the deck, that can be really interesting because let's say trumps are blue. However, the super trump is red. That means that red 1 is technically a blue. So if a blue gets led and if you only got the red 1, you must play. And that's really interesting as well. And it's just really fun. But you can also have Nyet. So there's a couple of spots on the board that say Nyet. So there's no super trumps for that round. And it's just trump cards. And the other ones are like the discard cards, which is like you have to discard 1 or 2 cards. You can discard 1 card, but basically you can't get rid of the ones, and then cards that you pass left and so on. Where it becomes super interesting is 5 players. In a 5-player game, you're in teams, and because you're in teams, you basically pair together. So let's say, for as an example, I was the first player in this game. I can choose whether to be on the team that has 3 or the team that has 2. If the team that has 2 is with me, I can then choose this special card that's a 2 times bonus for that round and double all the points that I get in that round, hoping that me and my partner in this game, with only 2 versus 3, can pull it off and win a bunch of trumps, especially if they're worth like 3 or 4 points each round. You can get crazy scores. But it's just a very interesting mechanic at the start of the round. And each round, everyone deals once, but each round is different. One round I'm on Dana's team, the next round I'm on MJ's and James's team, and then it swaps around. And you then have to look at who's scoring what, because by the end of, say, the 3rd round, if everyone's in the mid-20s and then there's one player that's on 35, you got to figure out a way to either team up on them or take the 2 times bonus and keep it for yourself, but have them on your team. It gets like this real interesting kind of meta play of like, who do I go with? Who do I not go with? What's going to happen? And it is very good. It's extremely good. It's so fun.
It's one of those, it's actually when I think about this particular trick taker, because I actually played a couple myself this weekend, new ones. This trick taker is layered, and not many trick takers are layered. It's so complex, but not too complex, if that makes sense. Most trick takers, to me, do something different. Like Scout, it's that you've got to keep your cards in order, or it might score based on who wins the most. Your opponents, you might score your opponent's tricks as opposed to yours. But this one has got layers, particularly with that beginning where you're placing those tokens and all that. It's got this beautiful set of layers in it. It's really fantastic.
I mean, that's the game, right?
Mm.
Placing out those things on that grid,
Yep.
that's the game. Otherwise, it would just be bland as there would be nothing to
Yeah,
it. But
yeah.
it's just fun. Like, I've never had a dull game of it. I've only played my copy once, and I've played Mitch's copy twice. And it's so simple. Like, even if you don't understand trick-taking mechanics, you can pick this up pretty easily. It's, a 5-minute teach and away you go. And it's not so complex that you will get lost or feel like, like you say, Joe, I'm not very good at trick-taking games, so I feel dumb. You because you're on a team with other players, it has that kind of 500 feel to it, which I really love. Like in 500, granted, it's 2v2, but in this, it has like this rotating 3v2, 2v3 switch around interest. And that's when it gets really fun, especially when the first player's already been selected and all of a sudden the 4-point token is there and they feel like, oh, nice, this might be worth a lot. And then someone covers it and then it's only worth 2 points. And then it might even be worth negative points. Then you've got to try and figure out who's going to be on your team because you're trying to lose tricks. And then that's interesting in itself because you want to choose, if you've got to be negative tricks, you want to make sure that the discard 2 is available so you can discard 2 cards so you're playing less tricks rather than playing the maximum amount of tricks. So people can really mess with you in that bidding round. And yeah, absolutely love it. Super simple.
One of my, I guess, not criticisms, but one of my issues with trick takers is if you didn't grow up with them, you can often not understand that language of it. One of my concerns would be with this game, the way you've described it, because I haven't played it yet, is what if you're in a team with someone who knows trick takers and they play a card to try and send you a message of some kind, and you don't pick up on it because you're me and you're dumb about trick takers. How does that factor in the game?
It definitely
I'm
does
dumb,
factor in
and
it.
It didn't.
It does factor in it. Dana just didn't notice. That's the difference. But like, it does factor in it, but it's not the be all and end all of the game.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It's not
yeah.
so deep that you're getting completely screwed out of it. But as an example, like if I lead off with a 10 blue and it's trumps, I might be trying to indicate to my team, this is my highest blue. So I hope one of you have got the 13, because if someone else plays the 12, you have to have my back. And that's pretty much it. Like there will be smaller metas and things that evolve if you play it a lot in a similar kind of group. But yeah, it's just super good, super fun.
I actually don't think it's the type of game that you're trying to send a lot of messages to. There's actually a lot of table talk in this game. It's not like there's a game that I played recently, which I was thinking about sizzling, but I haven't got around to it. But anyway, it's called Wicked and Wise, which is another like a team-based trick-taking game, but you're not talking to each other. You're doing very subtle card play. That's when you feel dumb. But I don't feel that this was like that. I wouldn't say I'm terribly good at trick-taking, but I didn't feel dumb.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's
I
so
hope
well.
Lauren agrees.
It's so well regarded, this game, that I'd love to give it a go and play it and see what it's like.
And I don't think it would not be impossible to make this yourself. Like this is one of the hardest to get. Like it's very hard to acquire, but it's I cannot believe they haven't done a reprint. Like there's so many people that hold this as a very highly regarded trick-taking game. It blows my mind. I believe this MJ got this from the States or the UK, like as an import. But, I mean, that's the grit. Like it's not. I'll put a post on the socials when the episode drops. It's not hard to make, and you could just use a deck of cards if you really wanted.
Yeah, you could just use a normal. Yeah,
so really, really cool, really fun. Definitely worth checking out if you can see it. If you see it on the secondhand market and someone's selling it for $20, buy that thing. Just buy it.
You're not getting it for $20.
It's happened. Someone posted it recently for like cheapest chips, and
No.
Mitch did the good thing and reached out and said, you might want to just check how much that game's worth, because you know you could probably triple that easily. But yeah, great game.
After we played it, I ended up buying it, and I bought it from, I think it was the UK.
What?
Something
Did
like
you
that.
really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Oh
I bought
my
it from
God.
the UK.
Can I ask?
It's on its way.
Can I ask it's what you paid? Am I allowed to know, or do you want to?
Well, it was.
Ben won't listen. Don't worry.
No.
Bleep it out.
No. It was US. I can't remember whether it was the UK, whether I paid in
Pounds,
pounds or something like that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, it's very good. Like, it's up there with in the top, and it won't move, because this thing got printed in 1993 or 1997, one of those two. I'll check it out, but it's going nowhere. Like, it's top game, so absolutely top game.
Yeah,
and it was 1997. There we go. So, and I believe, from what I can see of some pictures, some people have already made like a print and play version themselves. So, anyway, that was Nyet.
Cool.
Well worth checking out.
If you're looking to add to your board game collection without taking out a second mortgage, then look no further than Advent Games. Dean and the team don't just sell games, they play games, they know games, they love games just like us. The first thing you notice when you head to adventgames.com.au is the amazing range of games. Dean and the team have worked tirelessly to make sure that every game is properly catalogued into the website. You can search by card games, dice games, family games, gateway games, solo games, and games from your favourite designers. And they don't just have games. Advent has a huge range of RPG books, game inserts, organisers, sleeves, even miniatures and scenery to make your next game night an experience to remember. Shipping is a flat $10 if you live in the Sydney metro area, $15 for the rest of Australia. And don't forget, if you sign up for their newsletter, every Friday you receive an email with the latest specials, newest arrivals, and a list of all the games that have just come back into stock. So there's no excuse for missing out on that game that you desperately want in your collection. So why not grab your next sizzling game from Advent Games? Head to adventgames.com.au now.
And with some news and announcements after those amazing sizzles, we have the Melbourne Game Day coming up. Joe, talk to us.
Yes, so we've got the Melbourne Spring Game Day that we're putting on the 21st of September at the Gaming Arena in Coburg. Come along. Tickets are selling quick, so we've already sold more than a quarter of our tickets with many weeks to go. So better snap them up before someone else pips you to it. We'll have more details in future episodes.
Cool. And we also have the Sydney Game Day in the Castle Hill RSL on the 2nd of November. And I think after the success of PlayCon and some people in Sydney kind of finding out about Board Game Barbecue, they have followed us on other socials and have lapped up most of those tickets already, which is insane because the thing doesn't happen until November, which it blew my mind. But yeah, that's those things. Please head along to eventbrite.com and search for Board Game Barbecue, and that will give you all of the details that you would like to know about our events. Let's do a recap and a discussion about last week's question of the pod, which is, what's your earliest board game memory? Dana, what is your earliest board game memory?
Earliest board. I think it wouldn't be me playing it. The vision that I have is that my father, who's passed away, Italian man. Italians always play cards. Like, everything is about playing cards and vino. And I just remember many late nights, and it was loud, and they would play games like a particular card game called Briscola. I don't know if there's any Italians. Oh, well, Joe, of course.
Yeah.
Briscola and a few other games. And I just remember my father playing those games, he also played a game called Scorpa,
I've heard of that.
which I learnt, and it's actually got these beautiful cards that are made in a town in Italy called Treviso, which is where my father's from.
Oh, cool.
And it's I learnt that sort of growing up. So if I could think about my earliest memories, and I would say that I would be pre-primary school. It was a really long time ago.
Yeah, wow.
I would say it would be watching my father playing these card games. Yeah. Yep. And we used to, can I tell you something? Well, my father used to teach us various games, and they were always Italian games he would play. And if he got like a joker or something like that, the joke is that you lick the back of the card and you stick it.
I heard about this. You told me about this a long time ago.
On your forehead. We didn't think about germs back in those days, but and you'd be sitting down looking at your cards, and then suddenly you look up and see Dad with this joker stuck to his forehead, and it was so funny at the time, with us as kids. It was great.
And we heard about your memories last week, Joe, so that's kind of nice. And mine, I think for me, it would definitely be Monopoly and my uncle's house. Like we went and stayed with my uncle for a long time when I was a kid. And just those games in front of the fireplace that would go on for like 2 weeks. And I've seen other people's answers that also have had these Monopoly games that go for 2 weeks, which blows my mind because, we're trying to look for games that are kind of not fast, but I mean, like if you said, I'm going to play this game over 2 weeks, people would lose their minds. They'd be like, what are you talking about?
They're so busy now. Like
they've got life different
social media and all that. Whereas, we didn't have shops open on Sundays and things like that. So
it's different times. But we used to play Monopoly for a couple of weeks in a run, and I'm sure we didn't play all the rules correctly. And I mentioned it. It'd be like 3 years ago now on the podcast when we had Matt Leacock on the show, that my uncle used to bribe us with lollies for our properties. He'd be like, I'll give you a bag of lollies for Mayfair. And we'd be like, done, no problem. And my mum would be complaining and stuff about it. But it was great fun. So that would be my earliest board game memory. But we'd like to talk about some of the community's earliest board game memories. So, Dana, if you'd like to lead us off with the Facebook responses.
So, Jeff E. Bullard. That sounds like a really fancy name.
Cowboy.
Jeff says, an uncle who served in the US Air Force would visit every holiday season and regale us with stories of faraway places. One year, 1968 or 1969, I was 7, and he gifted me a copy of the Avalon Hill game, Company's D-Day. I've been collecting strategy and conflict simulation games ever since. How the hobby has grown and changed in production quality, diversity of topics, and game mechanics over those years. Then Stephen Lake says, my earliest memory is of my nan and I playing snakes and ladders. She would pop a minty or a fantail on some of the spaces, and we would be rewarded with treats as we moved around the board. I was 5-ish, and the year was 1970. People are commenting with the years because I kept in the socials. I said, I want to know what year it was when you were playing with this. So it's really great to hear all these old memories. I also enjoyed joining in on the 500 game whenever they needed a fourth. My first modern board game was a game my mum got when I turned 11, April 1976. An old Avalon Hill game called Tactics 2. Many a wet day was spent playing that on the dining table. And Ingrid Wright says, my first board game was Masterpiece, a set collection game with famous paintings on cards, which I played with friends. In particular, I loved the card with Renoir's The Umbrellas. This game started a real love of French Impressionism. I nearly died when I walked into the National Gallery in London a decade later, and there was the real thing.
Yeah.
Those
That's so
memories
cool.
are like a movie. Like you can almost picture it like in a movie. Yeah, it's so cool.
And Joe, would you like to read out the Discord replies?
Yeah, sure. So on Discord, we had Dryfly Stephen mentioned that I can remember the shock at discovering Scrabble wasn't played using white chocolate squares. A chipped tooth was another outcome, not the brightest of kids, I guess. I was definitely that kid as well.
Yeah.
And then Jonathan said that he had early gaming memories of going to bed as a 5-year-old with mum and dad playing card games with guests. And also at an age of being taught some of those card games so you could join in on the holidays, as well as opening up copies of Cluedo, Risk, and Scrabble at mum's workplace and trying to learn them.
On Instagram, we had Tumessian Todd say the Great Sesame Street Race. Play as Ernie, Bert, Prairie Dawn, or Grover. Who's Prairie Dawn?
I don't know, Prairie Dawn.
Prairie Dawn? I don't know.
And spin the spinner and move to the next coloured space. It came with a storybook about the race as well.
Prairie Dawn was the little pink puppet with the blonde wig.
Oh,
you
yes.
would recognise her if you knew her.
Yeah. I remember that. Oh, God, those bloody spinners. Oh, gosh, drive you mental.
So good.
Well, that was awesome. Thanks very much to the community for letting us know their earliest memories. Some of them are very beautiful, and we had so many that we had to take a few out. But yeah, thanks again for everyone who replied in the socials. It's always lovely to have those kind of discussions and trip down memory lane, which is cool as. The new question of the pod, we kind of talked earlier about expansions and what they mean and stuff. So we would like to know, how do you feel about expansions that contain patches or fixes for board games? And yeah, I'm going to reiterate kind of what I said before. I don't have a massive issue with it. I know a lot of the community do not like it. I've seen many a rant on BGG about they're not keen on that. The game should be working as it is, and an expansion should come out to add new content, not to fix things that are broken. As a prime example, Dune Imperium has another expansion coming out next year called Bloodlines. It's not due to fix any ongoing issues, but it's an expansion for both Uprising and Dune Imperium. That game is very tight and it has asymmetrical bits to it and more expansions, but I don't ever hear anybody saying, oh, it's fixing this, it's fixing that, this is a fix, that's a fix. All I hear is it's great content. So when it comes to a game that you like, that you might feel is a bit imbalanced or has problems, how do you feel about them releasing an expansion for something? And we've all touched on it already about how we feel. So
pretty much.
We really want to know what you guys feel and the larger community, how they feel about it. And would love to discuss it on the socials and in the Discord. If you would like to support the podcast, join the Discord, talk to us in the chat about random stuff. Someone today caught a trout in the Discord. That's cool. We get to see stuff like that. And it's just a great place to hang out and talk. It's awesome. I love hearing everyone's stories from all around the world, board games or otherwise. So yeah, great. Also, if you could leave us an Apple Podcast review, star rating, that's massive. Spotify rating system is also huge. It really helps bump us up and get us more noticed and make the community bigger and bring more people into this hobby, especially in Australia. It's grand. And if you want to go even further than that, for less than a coffee a month, you can support us on Patreon, where you get exclusive access to some special content, all sorts of wonderful things, including some crazy weird top 10s, Christmas episodes, all sorts of mad banter. We also have Patreon exclusive party nights where we do Jackbox, and we also do trivia nights. And I know a couple of them are coming up in the works very soon, I believe in September and October. I'll have to confirm that, but links will be in the show notes for all that stuff. And thanks for the support from all the patrons that we already have. We couldn't do it without you. Massive respect. On to the O's. Dun, 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 dun. That's my tune for you, Joe. Well, I'll kick it off first. I'll jump in. I played Cascadero with 2 people, not with 4. I probably should play it with 4. For me, it was fine. Like, it didn't blow me out the water. If I'm honest, I think I played Rebirth with 4, and I thought that was way more interesting, really fun. I think this game needs to be played with 4 to have that kind of impact. So I'm going to try and get it back to the table again and play it with 4 so I can have a good talk about it and see how I feel about it once I have that. My new oaths. One's a little bit personal. Eek, but that's fine. I need to go on a diet, man. Like something chronic. Holy dooly. And I've said it before, my weight goes up and down like Christian Bale. And I've said it, I'm at the Dick Cheney era, and I need to get back to American Psycho or Batman. Like, I go up and down, and I've just done it my whole life. And because of, I'm very good at being focused, and I know I can do it. So all I've got to do is no M&Ms, no junk foods, no pizzas, no fancy pants stuff. Get on that treadmill and start running. So that's me. Currently at 103. Let's see if I can get down to 90. Right? That's a good goal. So let's see how it goes. And also, I was very fortunate to be sent a review copy of the Elder Scrolls from Chip Theory Games, and I said I wouldn't talk about it because I feel like it really does need to be played a lot before going into a depth analysis on how I feel about it, especially when it comes to things like the lore and all the other things that happened in the second era that I'm really interested in. I want to see if they include any of those things. Maybe it's just a lot of flavor text that doesn't really tie into the greater universe. Who knows? I have played the tutorial twice, and you kind of follow what they do and you follow the little story and do the actions. And I did that. Then I did that same scenario again, but I made my own character and played it solo just to see how it played out and made sure I got it all right. And then I've now started my own adventure. I've now visited split cities and moved around and gone to different encounters. Initial thoughts on the game is if you like adventure games and you like Too Many Bones and you want to get into a campaign game that's not ridiculous and you're going to spend 2.5 years playing it like Kingdom Death Monster, but you can play it maybe over 4 months, 5 months, and it's kind of a wrapped up scenario, I would be backing this 100%. I've already backed it. I haven't cancelled my pledge. I'm leaving it there because I want my own copy.
Actually, late pledges are still open. I got a message about it, actually.
Yeah. It's very good. It's very intuitive. It's very interesting and thematic how all the characters work and how the combat works and the battle system works. I need to get it to the table with my group so I can explore a few other avenues that I want to try. One of them is the skill set of speech, being able to use it to, wangle your way out of things and talk your way out of things, which I feel like I could probably do quite well. So yeah, that's my oath, is to get that to the table with my group and get right into it and see how far we can take the game. So yeah, that's for me. Dana.
All right, I'm on a fail streak. I'm just going. Honestly, I'm going nowhere at
Join
all.
the club.
I'm going nowhere. Complete failure. I did play Expeditions, so that's tick. But Bardwood Grove, I don't know who was kidding when I said that. Anyway, so no, haven't done it. And New Oath, I don't know. Do I have to? Ask. Do I have to double up because I'm feeling pressure?
I wouldn't. Why don't? If you're off, if you've got no,
even get the other one done.
If you've got no work on Friday, you can come to mine and I can teach you Bardwood Grove. No problem.
Oh, man.
So I'll let you figure that out.
I'm not going to double up. I can't do it. I just
wouldn't.
keep failing every bloody week. I'm going to end up with a disorder.
You did Expeditions. You did it.
Yeah.
I know, but it's half. It's half. half
One
a
oath.
point. You
One
can't.
oath,
You
all right.
can't half pass.
One
Anyway.
oath's all right. In
Yeah.
my book, one oath completed is good.
So but I'm not doubling up. I'm putting my foot down, and I don't care what you people say.
It's all good. I'm the host, and I'm cruisy as, so it's fine. Joe.
So I was relatively late rigging for the episode because Mitch wanted to celebrate his birthday, which, guess he's allowed. So I haven't done my bigger oaths. So I haven't done Ticket to Ride Legacy or Horseless Carriage, but I did get to play Resist. So my oath from last episode was to play Resist, which I did get to do this weekend, and I really enjoyed it. So it was hard. I was not good at it, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I'm keen to give it a few more plays and see what it's like. I was going to do what Dana did and say get lost, and I'm not going to double down. But you know what? I think I will. I did buy a lot of games today with that voucher. So from the pile of games that I bought today, I did manage to pick up Mindspace, which I played at PAX last year and really enjoyed. So I'm gonna get that to the table with my family, I think, and see what they think of it. That'll be my new oath.
Nice.
Now I feel like a loser. Because
why?
because I didn't double up.
Don't do that.
It's okay, Dana.
That's just craziness.
I'm just more virtuous than you are, It's, the halo is heavy.
Oh.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you listening, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dana. Play more games. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, hooroo.